people, you know, and George, it's just one of those things where we know it, we believe it, we just have to have the science and the proof to back it up and show people. George, one of the things that the Hurricane Center just did was talk about the inland path of this storm, and while we have everybody's attention because we have those incredible images of this thing making landfall, I wanted to talk about I wanted to go one step further than Georgia into Carolinas, if that's okay with you guys, if you have time for that. So we noticed by the time we get to Dothan, Alabama and Albany, Georgia, we've got a Category 2 hurricane inland. Category 2 hurricane. This is going to be disastrous damage for South Georgia. Then the other thing, we're going to watch that cruise through Georgia and get into South Carolina. And at that point, we have about 45-mile-per-hour winds with the center of this storm. It's a tropical storm, an inland tropical storm in South Carolina and North Carolina, dumping 6 to 10 inches of rain in the same areas that flooded with Florence. And I wanted to give those people a heads up on that, George, happening Thursday into Friday for them.
Yeah, this storm is not nearly done. Okay, Sam, thanks very much. I want to go back to David. You're in Panama City Beach. We've already seen so much destruction, David.
Yeah, just extraordinary, George, to put this in perspective. As you've been likely saying, we were in sort of a stairwell here, a brick fortified stairwell with so many of the families that I showed you earlier. But then to emerge and be able to see the email again, third strongest hurricane to hit the U.S., not since Hurricane Camille in 1969. Everybody here on the crew, everybody is safe. I just wanted to share that with you. But I also wanted to give you an idea. This is what we had showed you earlier. The front end of the hotel coming straight down. That was where, obviously, we had been reporting earlier in the special, and you can see that roof down on a number of cars that were out there. Those were some of the SUVs that were parked there on purpose so that it would sort of protect the team as we were reporting early on. But you could feel this, George, as the hurricane grew closer, and you can actually still see through the window over there just the ferocity.
And David, the families that you're hunkered down
and the water
with,
that is whipping by.
The families you're hunkered down with, do they have any idea yet what's happened to their homes, or is it way too early to know?
Yeah, I think it's just absolutely impossible. And in fact, when we were in the hallway with many of them, we couldn't even get out on our cell phones. It just gives you an idea of, when we're in the middle of these natural disasters, the cell service immediately goes out because everybody is competing for what little cell power there remains. Actually, we're just going to back up a little bit from this door. You can actually sense when the pressure changes inside the hotel. You can see it in the rattling glass, but you can actually feel it and you can hear it too, George. The wind. It's just incredible. And I see those outer windows that we were told were up to code. They're actually buckling somewhat, and we'll have to see if they're able to withstand this hurricane before Michael's actually done passing through. I should tell you, George, you did ask about the families. So many of them, when they saw us back away and move into the stairwell, they too went into hallways on the interior part of the hotel. A lot of them are in the hallways here, and which is the smart thing to do. They have been following the advice of people here in the hotel and managers, and when they were told to seek safety in the hallways, they did. And we should mention that this morning, with just a few hours left, we heard from the administrator at FEMA, the head of FEMA, saying that the time to leave was over. We heard from Rick Scott, who said this hurricane can kill. And in fact, we know it already did long before it made landfall here in the U.S. It was responsible for a dozen or more deaths on its way here. So let's just hope with what we have witnessed here today, which is, quite frankly, and I've covered many of these hurricanes, something I haven't seen before.
And David, you could say we know now this is just the beginning. The cleanup effort here is going to be massive. It's going to take days and weeks.
Oh, there's no question. Even when we were still outside, George, to see the number of trees that came down within the first 15 minutes of just the outer bands of this hurricane arriving, and the power lines, they came down immediately. The power went out in the hotel. And it's important for folks who are watching this unfold at home that we have not forgotten about Alabama and Georgia. They are in the path of this storm next. The hurricane is going to be moving very quickly, unlike what we saw in Florence. And there's a significant worry that the power could be out for days, if not weeks, where this hurricane is headed next, even when it's done with its damage right here in the Florida Panhandle, which is just extraordinary. I should mention, I know you shared it with viewers on the air earlier. Everybody here on the team is safe. Ginger Z, that's one thing I was really happy to see see when I got out of that stairwell, George, is that she tweeted as well that she's safe. But you know, we're all watching those images on social media the way you are too, and to see that home lifted off its foundation and carried with the storm surge not far from where we were, that's just a stunning sight to see unfold here this morning.
Historically powerful storm. Okay, David, I know we're going to see you tonight, a special edition of World News Tonight from Panama City Beach. Our coverage is going to continue all day long online at abcnews.com. Hurricane Michael has made landfall, Category 4, 150-mile-an-hour winds. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, George. We continue now with our coverage of this devastating storm hitting the Florida coastline. Hurricane Michael, now classified as the strongest storm to hit the U.S. in 50 years since Hurricane Camille, the third strongest storm in U.S. history. It made landfall in Mexico City Beach in the Florida Panhandle. That's where ABC's Ginger Z is right now. We're unable to go to her right now because it's simply too dangerous. She's seeking shelter. The storm had 155-mile-an-hour winds as it made landfall, and even just slightly down the coast where ABC's David Muir is located, you can see the power of that storm. This is the view from the vestibule of the hotel where he has been reporting. That's a portico extending over the vestibule. And just listen.
We are in our same location, and I've got to tell you, a significant scare for the families who are inside this hotel with us. As you're looking out through the window, you can see the roof of the hotel that we had been standing out there. That was the shelter for a Category 4 hurricane. That has now come down on those SUVs that I was just telling you about earlier. Listen, the wind is picking up so much. We're gonna take a break, send it back to you, George. I want to make sure everybody's safe. We'll talk to you shortly.
And you can just see the devastating winds that are just raking across the Florida coastline as the hurricane heads inland. This is a storm that formed off the coast of Cuba on Monday. It has been gathering strength as it bears down on Florida. And to talk with us more about the path of this storm and the destruction that it's expected to cause, let's go to Melissa Griffin, meteorologist here in the Weather Center. Melissa, what can you tell us?
Hi, David. So this catastrophic Hurricane Michael has made landfall, a Category 4, and that's a high-end Category 4, 155-mile-per-hour winds. We have those extreme wind warnings in effect right now. And I want to show you, you can actually see right here on the satellite, nearly almost the entire eye is now moving into on land. Panama City to Mexico Beach, right in between there, that's where it has made landfall. We have those extreme winds happening right now. The extreme wind warnings are in effect from Panama City down to Apalachicola and even moving further inland as the hurricane moves further inland across the Florida Peninsula, across the Florida Panhandle. We already had wind gusts up to 130 miles per hour in this area. We've seen the damage. David, Ginger, both have shown us extreme damage in the area. We've seen trees going down, power outages, thousands and thousands of power outages are expected that could last for not days, but even weeks. I want to show you the track because this is very important. We can see right across, it's almost like a buzzsaw right across the southeast. We have several states under a state of emergency, not just Florida. We have Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, all are going to feel the impacts from Hurricane Michael. Even by Wednesday night, that's tonight at 8 p.m., a Category 2 hurricane in southwest Georgia. So this could be a major tropical event, even possibly a historic tropical event for Georgia as well. It's already been historic for the Florida Panhandle, who have never seen a hurricane like this on record. And then it's going to continue to push into the Carolinas. The Carolinas have just dealt with Hurricane Florence. Now they'll be dealing with this. More rain on top of the flooding they just saw last month before it pushes out to sea. I want to leave you with this tornado watch still in effect for parts of the Panhandle up through southwestern Georgia as Hurricane Michael makes landfall. We still have to watch for tornadoes. That is another threat with Michael, as well as the storm surge and, of course, the catastrophic winds we've already seen. David.
Melissa, as you pointed out in those maps, some major population centers in the path of this hurricane, going right between Atlanta, Raleigh, Charleston, etc. I know that it gathered strength as it came up through the Gulf of Mexico because of the warm water there. Is it likely to dissipate as it heads inland?
Right. Right, so it strengthened even more due to the warm water and the low wind shear right before it made landfall. Now, as it moves inland, it's going to start weakening pretty fast, but it's already so strong. Like I said, it's the third strongest hurricane to make landfall in the U.S., so it's going to take a little bit for it to actually start to weaken. That's why we see it as a Category 1 or 2 hurricane as it moves across Georgia. That's already potential very dangerous impacts for Georgia as it moves across the state. It does weaken, likely by Thursday morning, to a tropical storm when it moves across the Carolinas, but it's going to take some time to get there. We still have impacts tonight into the overnight hours for Alabama, Georgia, as well as Florida, what we've seen in the Panhandle.
Melissa,